Thank you all for being here. I first want to speak to the community of Douglas County and those kids that were at the STEM school yesterday afternoon. Our hearts are hurting for them, and I ask the community to come together as we always do here in Douglas County and be strong, excuse me, and pray for the family of the child that was lost and the other 8 who are injured and still suffering from their injuries, and then the other remaining almost 1,800 kids that were at the school that had to be a part of this terrible tragedy. So I asked first the community to do that, and I thank the media to helping me share that information. What I want to do just very quickly now is go through just some very quick things that happened yesterday and some new updates and information. Yesterday, a little before 2 o'clock, the STEM school notified law enforcement of an active shooter in their school. Officers responded. As you know, that the STEM school is less than probably about a mile from this substation. Officers from this substation, detectives and command officers responded, but we had officers on the street that were there with inside 2 minutes. Once at the school, they immediately engaged the suspects and started to rescue the children that were injured. We have an adult male that we sent out information on yesterday in custody at the Douglas County Jail. We originally thought that we had a juvenile male in custody, but through our interviews yesterday late afternoon, determined that we have a juvenile female that is in custody right now, who is the other suspect. All of the victims that were shot have been released except for three children that are still in intensive care and at area hospitals. We are still actively working the crime scene with our partners from the FBI. We anticipate that that's probably going to take at least 2 more days for us to manage that. I want to just make sure that we focus on the families and the kids at the school, at the STEM school. As you can see, we have the superintendent of schools here and the leadership from the STEM school. We've been working very closely with them since this incident and trying to do whatever we can to help the kids. Friday will be the last day for the seniors, and so we're obviously working very closely to get them a location and assist them for those children can return to school and finish their education for this season. That is all the information we have. I will say there's a couple more things. I apologize, and I think the district attorney may speak about it. We will have a hearing today, and George will be present at that at 1:30, and that will be the first appearance for the adult male. And George will share a little bit more information about that. All of the other information that we have, we know that a lot of you have developed information in regards to the deceased child. We have not gotten a positive from the Douglas County coroner, who has the legal authority and responsibility of releasing that person's name. We have contacted family members, but we are not releasing that child's name until the coroner has positively done what is required by law for the coroner to do that. We will push that information out after 2 o'clock today, and I do not anticipate that we will have any other press release information until tomorrow, once we have some more information in regards to our crime scene. You can imagine that it is a very extensive crime scene, and we have asked the assistance of the FBI to help us work in every location where a crime was committed inside that school by the 2 suspects. So I want to turn it over quickly to District Attorney George Brauchler, and then he'll turn it over to the governor, and then we'll answer a few questions. George.
Good morning. My name is George Brauchler. Last name is spelled B-R-A-U-C-H-L-E-R. I'm the district attorney for Colorado's 18th Judicial District. That is a judicial district that has 4 counties in it: Arapahoe, Douglas, which is the one we're in right now, Elbert, and Lincoln. I live in Douglas County, and for about 18 years I lived less than half a mile from where this incident took place. And I'm going to talk to you as the DA, but I want to begin by talking to you as the DAD, as the dad. I got 4 kids in this school system. My wife's business is less than a mile from here. I grew up in these parts. And if you had suggested to anyone behind me or in this room that within 20 years and 20 miles we would have dealt with Columbine, Aurora Theater, Arapahoe High School, the shooting of Zach Parrish and 4 other deputies, we'd have thought you mad, and yet here we are again. My heart goes out not just to the victims in this case, but there are those that won't be classified as victims that are feeling it this morning right now. Moms and dads looking at each other, making decisions about whether or not to send their kids to school in one of the greatest school districts in the country because they don't feel safe. That's the dad talking to you. We're having those conversations at home too. Now, as the district attorney, I tell you procedurally, we do have a hearing this afternoon at 1:30. That hearing is an advisement. It is going to take place at this time with the adult suspect. I want to make it clear too that no matter how much information is given out by law enforcement or is confirmed by other sources or you develop on your own, that for this system to work, those people have to be presumed innocent, including the individual that the sheriff's office released the name for yesterday, have to be presumed innocent for this system to work. And that's how we'll conduct ourselves. Now, at 1:30, this is a person who will be brought in, advised, given a preliminary advisement. There will be an attorney assigned or hired. There is going to be an additional date set after that, and we can have conversations after court at 1:30 to discuss procedurally what takes place after that. Now, there's also the juvenile suspect who is equally presumed innocent. In our state, as in just about every other, we have 2 tracks for adults and juveniles at this point in the process. I cannot tell you for certain that that juvenile will be advised today at 1:30. If we know more about that information before then, of course, we're going to let you know all that. A couple favors I want to ask of you, and we are too familiar with this process. The name of the adult suspect has been released. There are probably photographs out there now, and there will be additional ones in the future. The juvenile at some point will likely become known. My request to you as someone who has been in this game too long and dealt with cases of this high-profile nature too often is to adopt a no-notoriety approach. I know that you have an obligation to report the name, the identity. I know you have the obligation to put out a picture. But soon, very soon, let us move past focusing on the identity of the suspects and their images and focus instead on the innocent victims and on this crime and the investigation itself. Thank you. Oh, it's my privilege right now to introduce to you the Governor of the State of Colorado, Governor Jared Polis.
Well, I want to thank Sheriff Spurlock, Colorado Public Safety Director Stan Hilke, the FBI, and even more importantly, all of the first responders on the line, police, medical, ambulances, the school staff, parental reunification team. Really, a lot of people stepped up to this crisis to manage it competently and effectively. Everyone really came together, and now it's time for the community to come together in Douglas County, across Colorado, and our community across the country to support the parents and families impacted. You know, the past 24 hours have been very difficult for Douglas County, for Colorado. We learned that a student's life was taken too soon by this vicious act of violence. You know, as the father of 2 young children, I can hardly even imagine the horror and the grief that the families must be feeling. And of course, our prayers are for the complete recovery of the remaining victims. Truly, the heart of all Coloradans goes out to those affected in the school community here and elsewhere. You know, I think at this point, Coloradans are really heartbroken, frustrated, still shocked, and frankly sick over a mass shooting occurring right here in Douglas County. You know, schools should really be places where students can learn and grow, safe places, and we shouldn't have to worry about being marched out or being airlifted to hospitals or even losing one's life in a place that's supposed to be a safe place for all students. At this point, you know, as governor, I share the heartbreak, the frustration, the sickness that families here at STEM feel, families in Douglas County, and families across Colorado. We owe a debt of gratitude to our first responders and the men and women who responded quickly to prevent an even worse tragedy from unfolding. You know, time and time again, Coloradans have proven how resilient we are, and this time is no different. Yes, we come together in grief. We also come together to heal, and we come together to figure out what we can do better as a state and as a society. Thank you.
We'll take a few questions if you have for either the governor or the district attorney or myself.
There was a car
I'm sorry,
car
Tony.
taken away from one of the houses last night with graffiti on it. Can you talk to us about that?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, there was a car that was taken and seized as evidence at one of the crime scene locations, not one of the crime scene locations, but one of the locations where the suspects reside. That is still being under investigation. The graffiti on it is still being analyzed at this point, so I don't have any specific information on what it means or where it came from. Let me get with you.
Sure. Can you explain at all what the confusion was about the juvenile suspect's gender?
Yes, well, I can tell you it was a very confusing situation. We had a number of officers in a school where shots were being fired, and the officers were trying to recover victims. We identified who the suspects were. They were taken into custody, and at the time, the individuals that we believed were in custody were two males. It wasn't until we got to this office where we were able to determine that one of the suspects was a female. You have to understand that this individual is a young person. This individual is a small young person, and the identity wasn't definitive, obvious to us when they were taken into custody. And then I was shared that information and didn't have anything further when I made my first press release.
Can you tell us how you were able to identify the suspects, and what do you know about the motive of the shooting?
I'm not going to share information about the motive at this point right now. It's too new. We're only less than 18 hours into this case, and we're still working towards a motive. How we identified the suspects is through basic police work and assistance from the school district.
You mentioned another, is there any kind of interaction between the young person who died and the suspects, or other students who were in the room and the suspects?
Unfortunately, the deceased student, I don't have any particulars about any interaction other than the fact that the person was shot by a suspect. We do know that there were students, and we are going to hear about very heroic things that have taken place at the school. We do know that there was at least one that we can verify, the student that encountered the suspects. And I suspect that as the detectives get further interviews from them, we are going to find that there were much more heroic things. We watched on video some of the things that our deputies had done in regards to rush in and take the kids out and run them 100 yards to the closest ambulance. So there was a lot of those things happening throughout the school with employees of the school, other students, and staff. So we're too early to even clarify anymore.
You mentioned more specifically about encountered. Do you mean that they might have somehow tackled them
That
or
I-
touched them?
I'm using-
Does that make sense?
She wants to know of the word encountered. I'm using encounter because that's the best word I can come up with right now of their engagement. So I can't break that down any further for you. I'm sorry.
You mentioned another possible 2 days in terms of investigating a crime scene. How many locations could we be looking at when we talk about?
There's only one crime scene, and that's the STEM school. We have search warrants for the suspects' homes, as would be common practice, or any cars that they have access to. So
You mentioned multiple locations within the school. Can you get any more specific as to how far they could have gotten around in terms of different?
as I
schools?
said before in the first briefing, these children went to that school. The suspects went to the school. They were able to get deep inside the school. That's the only thing that I can share at this point in regards to the crime scene.
Sheriff, did the student that passed away, did that happen inside the school, or was that at one of the local hospitals?
No, that child died at the school.
Sheriff, you talked about having some video that you've already reviewed. Can you tell us anything about how these suspects were apprehended? They obviously weren't I don't know, were they injured? How did they get taken out?
Okay, I can't. They were not injured at this point. I can't tell you the specifics on how they were arrested, other than they were taken into custody, and they were removed from the school by my deputies. Other than that, I can say that we did not exchange any gunfire with them. I can tell you at that point. Other than that, I can't share anything else.
Were they already restrained by the time your deputies got there?
I believe one of them was restrained when the deputies came in contact with them.
And was that by students?
No, that was by the security officer that was at the school.
Sure. How many weapons were involved, and how did they get into the school?
Again, as I said before in it, we know that pistols were used in this assault. The number of weapons that were at the school and how they got in, we're not releasing because that's subject to the prosecution case.
Sheriff, so there was more than one gun, so you mentioned just one handgun.
Yeah, there was 2 handguns. I'll tell you that at this point.
Sheriff, were the two shooters together when the first shots rang out, or were they in separate places inside the school?
That I cannot. I can't. I can't answer that question. I'm sorry.
Were they apprehended together?
They were not apprehended together.
Sheriff, are there metal detectors at the school, or they would have gone?
There are not metal detectors at that school.
Sheriff, with the new red flag laws, do you think these laws could have prevented this from happening? And also, what do you think we could do with schools, since so many school shootings, what could have prevented this from happening?
He asked about the red flag law with that of assisted law enforcement, and what could we do to prevent other school shootings. As you know, the red flag law requires a tremendous amount of information and intelligence gathering before anyone is subject to an ERPO. And these suspects are young adults or juveniles, so their ability to create a criminal history is kind of minimal because of that. So at this point right now, I would say that there isn't any particular information at this point. Neither one of them were of legal age to own or purchase a gun anyway, so it's a moot point in regards to red flag. One of the things that we can do to help our children and keep our schools safe, and that is working together with your school district, local law enforcement, and the government that assists all of those, and educating our children, educating our community, see something, say something at a school. Those are the kinds of things that we can do, educate our children, that if they see something or hear something. We have a great program in Douglas County, Text to Tip. There's a state program, Safe to Tell. Those 2 programs work wonderfully in the state of Colorado every day that you folks don't even know about, that we avert disasters and tragedies because children's. Mountain Vista was one of them where we were able to do that, and individuals were arrested and charged for that.
Sheriff, any reason to believe these individuals were supported or directed by anybody else at this point in the investigation, and where did they get the guns?
Too early to tell at this point. The ATF is assisting us on the location of the purchase of those guns.
Sheriff, can you tell us if there were any warnings about the shooting via social media or otherwise?
That is too early for us to tell. We are deep in all of the social media searches, computers, phones, all that kind of stuff, and interviewing. You have to understand, again, there are 1,800 children at that school. About 600 of them were probably most definitively affected by it because of the pod that it was at. So we're only 18 hours into this. That's a lot of kids to interview, and we still have a lot more to interview.
Are the suspects cooperating? Are they talking to you, or are they being...
I can't share that information at this point.
Sheriff, is there any future plans to have schools implement a security system where metal detectors are going to be installed?
Okay, I can't, you want to know if there's any future plans of putting metal detectors into schools? We work very closely with the school district. As you can see, we have their leadership up here, and we strive every day to try to find ways to protect our children while they're in schools here in Douglas County and still have an environment of appropriate education. So we're still working on that, but I don't have anything particularly. We're going to do a few more questions. Anyone in the back, we've been beating these guys up front up.
Do you know if the student who passed is close to graduating?
Yes, that student was going to graduate and would have been out of school in 3 days.
Do you know which suspect fired the bullet that killed the student who passed away?
No, I don't, and we had a question for the governor.
Governor Polis, once again, the nation's eyes are on Colorado, and in a very negative way right now. Can you add perspective, your concern on what this says about our state? We heard about prior shootings, we all know about prior shootings. What do you say to the people that are looking at Colorado right now and saying we have a problem?
Well, we've been no stranger to tragedy. It was just a couple weeks ago that we observed the 20th anniversary of the Columbine shooting with the solemn ceremony, but also a focus from the survivors now in their 30s, their families. Great to see that many of the Columbine survivors had kids and families of their own. And they dedicated that anniversary to a day of service, giving back to their community, building upon the tragedy that they experienced. So too, in this tragedy, families will come together to support those directly affected. We are a resilient state, whether it's in the face of fire, floods, or a human tragedy of senseless violence like this. Coloradans really come together and show support for the kids and families affected as we make sure that we know that we can do a better job and help make sure that kids are safe in schools in our state and across the nation. You know, America has seen too many of these senseless acts of violence. And there's, you know, a discussion, of course, to be had about what we can do to make sure kids are safe at school. Today, obviously, with less than 24 hours after the tragedy, it's really about the outpouring of support from all sectors for the families directly affected, and of course, our hopes that the remaining victims who are hospitalized fully recover.
Tony, can I say something about that? Because this is my home. This is not who we are. And my concern is, as this thing gets reported outside the borders of this state and across the country, because of the things we've talked about, this becomes how people view us. This is not who we are. We are exactly what the governor said. We are a resilient people, but the time for resilience isn't going to be within the first 24 hours of this. We're going to mourn, we're going to weep, we're going to take care of those who are down and pick ourselves back up. But who we are is we are a kind, compassionate, caring people, and this does not define us. It won't today and it won't tomorrow. These are aberrant acts. Problem is, when you get 3, 4, or 5 of them within a 20-mile radius, you begin to think they're less aberrant. But I'm here to tell you this is not who we are. Our school district is awesome. Our school district is safe. And my kids are going to go to school today, and I recommend everyone else send their kids to school too.
Has there been any talk about
Why do you think events like
I'm going to go right here.
happening in our community? Governor, if you can answer that for us in Spanish if it's possible.
And if
See,
you could please repeat that question.
Why does it happen in this community?
Happening in our community.
Yeah. Una cosa como eso puede pasar en cualquier lugar en nuestro estado o nuestro país, pero hoy, ayer, lo pasé aquí en Douglas County y nuestros corazones están con las personas aquí en Douglas County y también queremos para todos los niños mejorar sus condiciones y regresar, y los otros niños regresar a escuela seguros sin la necesidad de pasar más tiempo sin dudas.
Has there been any talk about charging the juvenile as an adult?
Yeah, it's a fair question, and it's something that we're going to explore. We've made no decisions at this point, and you brought up the charges. Let's talk about things that will become publicly available. You will see charges at some point referenced in court or an affidavit early on. Those are not the official charges that will ultimately necessarily be filed a few days from now, but they are the initial charges upon which the adult is booked. As to what we'll do with the juvenile, I'm going to continue to wait and see what the investigation reveals. I want to make a smart decision about that, and I won't be rushed into it.
Sheriff, where did the suspects enter the school?
Excuse me, want to know where the suspects entered the school. They entered through the middle school entrance, which is the northeast side of the STEM school.
And are there metal detectors at that entrance?
No, there are no metal detectors at that location.
Sheriff, can you talk a little bit more about the security officer? You said, I think yesterday, they do not have a school resource officer. Is this somebody who is armed? Is this somebody who is just kind of there monitoring?
So this school does not have an SRO, but the STEM school contracted with a private company for security, armed security officer at that school, and that individual's job was just that. Again, taking in consideration that the footprint of the STEM school is pretty extensive, so that security guard had that school to monitor.
So that security guard was armed?
The identity of the younger,
Yes, the school security officer was armed, ma'am.
could you discuss the identity of the younger suspect? I know all of us want to make sure to report correctly. Does this person identify as transgender? Was that confusion?
Okay, right now we are identifying the individual as a female because that's where we're at. We originally thought the juvenile was a male by appearance, and like I said before, I did the press release very early on, and before the detectives were able to get medical and detectives were able to speak to her, and I was able to get information. That information was corrected, and I had already put out information that the individual was a
Two
male.
more questions, please. Two more questions.
The injuries there, you mentioned, we can get really kind of specifics. Were they all shot, or were there other injuries sustained, maybe trying to get away from the school?
Okay, all 9 of the students that were wounded at the school were shot at the school.
Okay, one more
Can we
question,
ask the
please.
school official a question?
The school decided that at this point right now, this is a law enforcement briefing along with the governor, and they've asked not to answer any questions right now. We're working closely with them on a number of things.
One more right here, right here.
Was there just that one security officer, or was there multiple at the school?
Just one security officer at the school.
Was the door unlocked?
They have access to get into the school.
All right, you guys, thank you so much. What we're going to do is, like the sheriff stated before, we're going to put together a press release after 2 o'clock, and we hope to be able to release the identity of the victim. Again, please follow us on Twitter for any updated information until then. And I know you guys had some more questions and things like that, but we need to wrap it up. And again, just follow us on Twitter and look for the press release after 2 o'clock. Thank you.